Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. As the title suggests, we're going to be talking about evergreens today. Pros and cons and how we like to use them in our specific gardens. So we're going to start with winter and then we're going to move on to summer. So pros and cons of winter, pros and cons of summer. Shall I start with the ones that I grow in my garden? Yeah. I think the main one that I like to grow, and this is probably one of the most, I think, underrated plants on the market. One, because it's so cheap, and because it grows so fast, and it's obviously an evergreen, which is Laurel, which is the common Laurel. I use that. I think I've probably got 4, 5, maybe 6 sections in the jungle garden, which I use it as like a bulking shrub. You can grow them as trees, you can grow them as standards, you can grow them as shrubs. Screening, they're great.
You've got them in your front garden as well?
I've got them in the front garden, yeah. They border...
it's almost like a wind block to the front of the house.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And they shelter one of the sheds as well. So yeah, really, really useful plant. Lovely glossy leaves. And I think, I mean, for me, I just wouldn't be without them.
Are they fairly cheap, or how? So, for example, how much did you pay for? Where did you get those ones out the front? 3 or 4 years ago? No,
yeah. When I bought the house 5 years ago, they were probably 4 foot, and I think they were about at the time 10 or 12 quid each.
Is that what they were?
Yeah. Nowadays you can probably get a 3, 4 foot one for maybe 15, 20 quid.
Yeah.
But once it's been in the ground a year or two,
I suppose if you look as well, the more you buy, the cheaper it'll be as well.
Exactly that. If you can multi-buy, yeah, absolutely.
I really like them as well. Every time I walk into your garden, I think, like you say, that glossy leaf, because it is year-round, evergreen, it does give it that year-round interest when you walk in your front garden. It's something that's always there as a standard, isn't it? And
absolutely.
Does it mind being cut, or is it being trimmed?
No, they love a good trim.
Yeah.
Pushes them out, bulks them out. Encourages more growth.
Yours is almost like one big bush.
One big unit, and there's probably, I think, maybe 6 or 7 plants in amongst that. So a good trim will bush them out, and like you say, they will look like one plant. So yeah.
So what else do you grow evergreen-wise in your jungle garden then?
I've got Cordylines. They're another great evergreen to grow. Again, it suits the jungle look, and it's another completely different leaf shape, texture, which is great because when you are doing the jungle gardens, you need so many different types of leaf.
I forget that they are evergreen because I've got one next to the pond, haven't I? The purple looking.
You have, yeah. The purple one's the less hardy one. I can't remember what the actual name was.
I can't remember.
The red leaf one is slightly less hardy, but again, our summers down in the southeast coast, most will survive.
I've had that for 3 years next to the pond, and I think it's springtime or it might be autumn. Yeah, I think it's springtime. Sure it is. I just cut back. There's the kind of lower leaves die back a bit.
Yeah,
cut them back.
That's normal.
But there's always been fresh growth for the last few years. So, I forget that they are actually classed as.
I've just planted one of the red types in my front garden. So yeah,
we'll put the name here now.
Yep, here now. It worked last time, didn't it?
Did it? Right, don't watch this channel.
Yeah, I think it's Torbay Dazzler rings a bell, but I don't think it is Torbay Dazzler. But we'll look into it and put it up on the screen.
Sounds like one of the names you used to use when you went out dancing.
It is, yeah. my clubbing
Torbay
name.
Dazzler. We'll check that anyway.
Yeah.
So what about palms and bits like that in terms of your tropical vibe that you've got?
So I've got 2 hardy palms. We've got the Phoenix canariensis, which is a great palm. The further up north you get, they can be a bit iffy, especially when they're quite small plants. Obviously, the older they get, the more established they get, the thicker the trunk, the hardiness goes up with them. But down here on the southeast coast, you know, they all survive. They're great. Mine are probably about 5 or 6 foot now. I've got 2, just again hidden in the border as just an additional leaf shape. Yeah, great. Trachycarpus is the other one that's hardy, evergreen. It's one I again wouldn't be without. And I was lucky enough a few years ago when I was actually starting the jungle garden. There was a guy on the marketplace again. We rave about marketplace, don't we? But it's always a place to look. He was getting rid of, I think it was probably 6 or 7 different sizes for 50 quid back then. So I got an absolute bargain. But there was everything from, 1.5 foot to 6, 7 foot ones. So
were they in pots when you got them?
No, they were literally just taking them out of the ground, bagged them up and just sold them.
Are they easy to move?
When the smaller they are, the easier. But as you know, we moved that 7-foot trunk. They're bloody heavy. They do.
That was funny.
That was funny. Yeah, it was a good laugh. But
they do
that. They do transport quite well. Yeah, quite easily.
Yeah, we're not going to reposition that anytime soon.
No, that's staying where that is. But again, with the palms, where you get different sizes, it really does help with structure, you know, layering and things like that
Yeah.
when they're different sizes. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good
Talking
one.
about layering, so you're going to be doing, because obviously your jungle garden's maturing every year and growing every year. Your under canopy, is there anything evergreen wise that you're going to be looking out for this year to kind of bulk out that lower section under the canopy?
I think we'll probably just stick with the ferns.
Yeah.
Because where you have got the canopy and it is quite sheltered now, it doesn't get as cold, so it is its own microclimate effectively, which does enable you to have the ferns, and they do most of the time stay fully, you know, full foliage and evergreen. Yeah,
You're
so
quite partial to Fatsia though, aren't you? As well?
I do like a Fatsia.
like
There's
me.
quite a few different ones. I think I've got 4 different types now, but up in the jungle, I mainly use just the standard one. We have got the Needham's form one up there as well, which we got from the garden show a couple of years ago, which is now settled in and is looking really good. But
And they're all evergreen, the ones that you've got as well, and they're
it seems to be. Sometimes they can get a little bit hit by the frosts, but
do you know what?
they
The
bounce back.
Fatsia, I got Fatsia given to me by my eldest son last year in June for my birthday, and it only had a few leaves on it, and it was really small, wasn't it? But that has just grown and grown, and it's definitely continued to grow through the winter months.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think mine have as well.
I'm certain it has.
Yeah.
Because when I'm looking now, I'm thinking, wow, you've really shot. And then when I walk the dog around the roads in the evening and stuff, you sort of see these huge forms of what I've got, and I'm thinking, wow, have I put that in the wrong place now?
Probably, no, not at all. No, I think where you've got it is it's quite sheltered, it's quite shaded. Perfect. It's perfect.
It clearly loves where it is in that shaded spot.
Yeah,
so,
it's doing really well.
Yeah.
The great thing about Fatsias are as well, through the winter, they obviously flower and leave the berries, so they're great for wildlife.
Yeah.
Along with ivy as well. Now you've got a ton of ivy, haven't you?
A ton of ivy, too much.
Yeah.
I mean, when I dug the wildlife pond out, which you can look at another video for a couple of days ago, the wildlife pond, when I was digging that out, yes, there was roots from all sorts of stuff, but the ivy tree next to it, and the ivy, I mean, the roots are just like everywhere in the garden.
It's a monster.
Everywhere I dig in the garden, there's ivy roots, there's ivy growing up all the fences.
I think you kind of just try and live with it, because it's a lovely plant. Again, I think it's
I love it.
Underrated.
I love it, and it's a fantastic backdrop to, especially in the colourful months. So March onwards, and you get those pops of colour against the backdrop of a full sheet of ivy. It looks fantastic, and
they've got a really similar flower to the Fatsia as well, actually, and they flower quite late in the summer. I think normally flower about September to November, give or take, whatever the season is doing. I think they're one of the last flowers or last plants in the garden, especially in the UK, to flower. So it gives the pollinators and things one last hit at getting some pollen and food.
People pay a lot of money for my ivy, honestly. But it's
not a special ivy. It's just
but the amount of it that
you have got a lot.
You know, it takes years to grow what we've got in our garden, but. It's pros and cons, really, isn't it?
It certainly is.
But I do like it. Yeah, we've also got the Leylandii all the way down that right hand side of our garden. So that shady border where I've got the acers, the ferns, the Fatsias there. What else have I got there along there? The acanthus is there, isn't it? The giant, massive wad of acanthus.
It's lovely. That a lot of people don't like acanthus. They say it's a bit of a thug, but you've managed to.
Oh yeah, 100%. And where it has kind of. Oh, what's the word what's it called? Spreads.
Sucker.
That's the one. When it starts to spread out a little bit, I've used that to my advantage, and then I've moved it in a couple. You took a bit of it.
Yeah, I've had a bit.
And I've put it on so it's now opposite each other. As you walk up the garden, you've got a huge section which was what we inherited, and on the left-hand side, almost opposite it, near one of the little wildlife ponds, I've got a big lot of it growing now from literally a small bit which we took out a couple of years ago. So it does grow really well.
I've just bought a variegated version. I think it's Sweet Winter or White Winter, something like that. But yeah, it's lovely.
And that's it. It's interesting because that's the sunny side, isn't it? Where I've put it, where I've moved it, a little bit of it, and it's done really well there. So obviously he loves the shade because that's where it is at the moment, and it's huge.
But it's doing well in the sun as well.
Yeah. As you can see here, or not? Yeah.
Yeah, it can do. I'll put one in.
But yeah, evergreens in my garden, like I said, I've inherited a lot of it, and then I've tried to kind of manage it because it is the sort of stuff that can be too much. Privacy is not the word. Leylandis are great for privacy, but
just be careful where you plant them because they can
Yeah.
and once they get settled, they are
And
a
obviously the
nightmare.
ones that we've got are years old. But it is fantastic the amount of sparrow nests and birds of all sorts that you see going in amongst that leylandi is incredible.
Yeah, they've got to be great for overwintering insects and bits and bobs like that.
Yeah. Oh,
haven't they?
yeah, it must be. Yeah, and anything you chop back, I always put into a pile at the back of the garden, and you know, goodness knows what's in that in terms of insects and bugs and whatever. Frogs, everything will probably use that as hiding spaces, won't they? So it's all being used again if and when I do chop it back.
That side of the garden is almost its own. It's got its own shelter belt, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Which again, evergreens are great for shelter
Yeah.
belts. If you're lucky enough to have a larger garden, yeah, they're really handy because obviously they keep the foliage and keep that wind to a minimum.
Yeah. So we like my garden. I've said before, my garden backs onto about 7 or 8 different gardens. So we're like the side of one road, and then we get sort of 7 or 8 different longer gardens. And they've obviously over the years used it to sort of put some privacy at the back of their garden, haven't they? And just so happens that's the side of my garden, so it has given me this immense amount of shade.
But it is a lovely backdrop.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
it's better than looking at a fence panel.
Oh, 100%. Or someone sunbathing in their garden.
Well, I don't know. It depends. It depends who it is. Right. On that note, shall we move on? Let's move on to summer points, shall we?
Yeah. So obviously we've talked about foliage, but come summer, obviously winter, it gives you that year-round interest, doesn't it? Because it says it in its name is evergreen. But come the summer, the foliage does change on certain evergreens, doesn't it? And it gives you more.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the Fatsias, they're brilliant in the summer, and they just glow, especially if you've got them in a bit of shade and a bit of shelter. The leaves just get bigger and glossier and darker, and they just look amazing in the jungle garden. They really do, really do. And again, they're a really cheap plant as well.
Yeah,
I can't recommend them enough.
They're 10 to a dozen in supermarkets and stuff, aren't they? Small ones, but like I said, mine's grown like mad in its first 9 months, so it's definitely worth the investment, isn't it? And mine loves the shade, so I don't know if that's any help to you guys.
Another one of my massive favourites, and I've written it down here and ringed it because I didn't want to miss out on this one, is the Clematis armandii. Now, I think I've planted 3 or 4 in the garden now, but one specific one has just taken over. And the flowers on it are just absolutely stunning. And we're just coming into season now where probably maybe in a week or two, it's going to be in flower. And I think it's probably the first plant in the garden to flower.
Is that the one that you've got on the wire across?
Yeah, so we've run a wire from halfway up the garden right across to the shack, haven't we? And it's just taken over. It's a prolific grower. It's not the cheapest. It was, but the last couple of years,
people have gotten onto it.
Yeah, and the prices have really gone up, but it's stunning. It's a beautiful, beautiful plant.
Yeah. So what about anything else in summer in terms of what you've got in your garden that you're looking forward to seeing again?
Another thing I really like is the hebe. Now, I'm not sure what hebe this is. We got it, I brought it from a house that I was in 6 years ago, which was an old farm cottage. I've been told it's an old English variety, but again, I've not had a name or anything like that. So I'm not quite sure, but it is absolutely covered in white flowers. It's very similar flower to a buddleia.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't flower for long, but when it does.
That in your garden?
That is, well, again, there's 4 or 5 different places. There's one as you go up the steps. There's another one as you go over the boardwalk. There's 2 on the backside.
Yeah.
And I think there's one in the corner as well. So yeah, there's 4 or 5 different.
Yeah.
But again,
I can't picture that.
They've gone up to probably within 4 years of being in the ground, 5 years of being in the ground. They've probably got up 6, 7 foot from tiny little cuttings.
Yeah.
So they've done really, really well. I'll have to try and find the name. If I put a picture up, if someone does know the type, if you can give it to me, would be great because I'd really like to know.
Yeah. The thing with green is it is a colour in its own right, and I think a lot of this has been covered lately on things like Gardener's World and Beach Grove and things like that I watch. That green, we need to start appreciating, like as gardeners and sort of amateur gardeners like we are. We need to start appreciating green for what it is, rather than thinking, I think I already do. Oh, you do, yeah. Well, you have to, don't you? And I've got not much choice with what I've inherited in my garden, but I think there is like a common kind of perception, or there was even for me until I really started to understand gardening a bit more and start to appreciate evergreens for in their own right. Do you know what I mean? Rather than just a backdrop or a
You've got to be quite careful though, because if you have a garden full of evergreens, in the winter it will stop that, especially if they're large evergreens, it will stop that winter sun from just peeking over and just giving your garden a little bit of warmth, even if it raises it by 1 or 2 degrees. You need that winter sun to break through.
If they're managed in a way that you can appreciate them and not let them get out of control or inflict any kind of negativity on your garden, you can.
Harsh.
That was big, wasn't it?
Harsh.
Inflict negativity on your garden. I'll use that.
Poor evergreens.
Yeah, you know what I mean, though, don't you? Like, managing it properly, and you can definitely appreciate them. And I definitely appreciate that sort of thing in a different way than what I would have done 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah.
Last summer I visited Great Dixter. Now he's got an old rose garden that's now been turned into a tropical jungle area. It's not big. It's probably 10 metre by 15 metre at a guess, I would have thought. But he's mixed in various pines and things like that in with the bananas and the grasses and things. And it's just, I probably took 2 or 3 on last year, and I'm glad I did, because it really does just finish the garden off in a different way. It brings a different. We've got the Scots pine that Nan gave us. Yeah, that went in. We've got the weeping Nordman. That looks really good. And what was the other one I got? I can't remember now. But yeah. Well, the pines are a good addition. Really good addition. Yeah. I think to any garden as well. Even your cottage garden. You've got the pines right at the back, haven't you? Yeah. Which, it's a lovely backdrop.
It is a lovely backdrop, and there's nothing I can do about them either, because they're not in my garden.
But, they're about 40, 50 foot high, aren't they?
And again, that does take so much sun away from the garden. But again, you learn to appreciate it, I suppose, when you can't get rid of it anyway. Yeah. You've got no real choice. But they are, I do appreciate them. And we've kind of grown up going to the New Forest, haven't we? And camping down there and being amongst the trees and the wildlife and stuff. So we've got that kind of ingrained in us from a really young age. That forest vibe and just appreciating trees and evergreens and stuff anyway. So I think
slowly as the years are going on, our gardens are kind of merging into the same sort of thing, aren't they? The same sort of style.
You'd like to think so.
Are they not?
Not just yet.
Maybe
I don't think I've seen any sweet peas growing in your front garden this year.
No, nor will there be.
Mind you are doing a bit of veg, which
I'm giving the veg a go this year.
Which we're going to do. What's the thing called now? Is it meter? Every meter matters.
Yeah, something like that, wouldn't it? Make a meter matter.
Make a meter matter. There's something going on which we're trying to figure out whether we're going to be getting involved in or not, but I think we probably are.
Yeah, we'll leave that for another thing.
We'll leave that for another thing.
You're drifting again.
No, I'm not. You said your garden's becoming mine and mine's becoming yours, but it's very much not.
Fighting your case. All right, back to evergreens.
However, those sweet peas that I planted in his garden last year might be popping up now and again.
Yeah, maybe so. They'll soon be dealt with. One more summer point, I think. They help to give shade, especially in my garden. It can get, it's south-facing. It can get really, really warm. Not so much now because the garden's matured and it's all above your head and we've got the canopies. But the evergreens are a really good way of keeping that temperature where it needs to be.
Yeah, and again, if you've got a bigger garden, you can use it in a different way to what you would in a small garden. Yeah. But I've seen a lot lately about small gardens having bigger trees put in them. And actually it creates a feeling, you'd think it would create a feeling of the garden feeling even smaller and more compact, but actually it has the opposite effect.
Well,
I can completely understand.
Look at my garden.
Yeah, I completely yeah, that's a good point, to be fair.
Yeah.
Because yours isn't huge by any stretch of imagination.
The jungle garden's not.
No. And I can't remember what it was I saw the other day. It might have been on one of the Gardeners World catch-up things, but they had a really small garden, like a new build sort of style garden. And they put big trees all along the sides, and actually it had the opposite effect of what I thought it would, and it did make it look bigger than what it was, definitely.
Yeah.
So it's interesting if
that was a good trick when I painted my fence panels black as well. You kind of lose the borders, and then you've got no real idea of where the garden ends and where it starts.
Yeah. And you put a couple of mirrors on those black.
Yeah, we've got some big wardrobe mirrors, which really did. There's a couple of videos we did on them actually in there, but we'll maybe we'll do a podcast on how we've used the mirrors. Yeah. But that really does, where they're so big and we've put them in big frames to match the jungle effect, you don't really notice that they're mirrors, and it's like a continuation of the garden. It looks really effective, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, yeah, it really does.
Right, anything else we need to go over?
I think we've done, aren't we?
I think what we'll do now, we'll leave some footage of my garden and Ollie's garden and the evergreens that we grow. I'll try and get plant names as well. And yeah, that finish off this podcast quite nicely, I think.
Yeah, awesome. Do stay tuned for more videos coming up in the next week or so. We're constantly doing shorts and reels. We are also on Instagram as well, so if you can follow us on there, and obviously subscribe to this channel, which is our hub for the podcast. We are on Spotify as well, so wherever you listen to your podcast. So do follow us and do give us a subscribe. We really do appreciate your support. We're growing and growing, which is just fantastic. Lots of people are getting in touch and wanting to do things with us, which is really good as well. More to come on that soon.
I'm glad we got this one done, actually, because we wrote this in November, didn't we?
Yeah.
And November was a warm month. December was a warm month. We did the garden tour of my garden it was New Year's Eve, wasn't it?
Yeah, it must have been.
And in that tour, we were looking around the garden and you could see things, and there was new growth coming out of things like salvias. And it was just, we thought we were going to get through the month unscathed, or the year unscathed rather, but a few days after that, the frost hit and everything's now, but it's enabled us to do the evergreen video.
Yeah, it won't be long before it's November and we're doing another one anyway. No. So. But yeah, for now, guys, really appreciate your support and we'll catch you again soon. See ya.
Ta-da.